Okay, that's the reason. Alright, okay, I'm gonna scoot your first just to get there, and I think we are, oh, perfect, alright. Alright, first question is, what is your last name? Spell it, first name and middle initial.
Last name is Schanzmeyer, Schanzmeyer. First name is Bernard, Bernard. Middle initial is A.
What year were you born?
March the 2nd, 1928.
Where did you live when you became part of the military?
I was living in Meta, Missouri, small town south of here.
Yeah.
What branch of service were you a part of?
The Army.
How did you get in the service? Were you a volunteer or drafted?
I was drafted. Right. I've got a story written up here that I want to pass out to you.
Okay.
I don't know if you could use it or not or whatever, but I just thought it's a pretty well. Actually, let's go on a little bit different. I wrote a book.
Really?
Oh,
That's cool.
That when I got back, and what happened when before I went in, Jean and I, my wife and her mother, were dating for a couple of years, and we were thinking about getting married maybe. Also, I was working in the shop at Meta with my two older brothers and my dad. My dad was wanting to retire, and I was going to buy him out. Well, I didn't want to be gone too long because I had things I was wanting to do. So I thought, well, I'll take a chance of letting be drafted rather than joining the Air Force or the Marines or some other Navy. Those were 4 years, and if you were drafted, it would be for 21 months. If you went overseas, it was 24 months if you served stateside. So I thought I'd take a chance. So what I did, I made up an, what do you call it? A list of all my qualifications, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Because I did do some mechanical work at the shop with my dad and brothers. Also took care of the parts department, so I had some experience in supply. Also, I was their main accountant. And General Motors at that time was pretty particular in sending in a pretty complicated report every month, and I did that. So I felt that I could sure get a job either as a mechanic or maybe in supply somehow or another, or maybe as a clerk. But it didn't happen that way. I ended up in the infantry as a rifleman. Because at the time that's what they needed. They didn't need anything else. They needed boots on the ground. Because the war started in June of 1950, and this was in like September, or August or September when I was drafted. And that's what they needed, was boots on the ground, and that's what I turned up had to do.
all right. So when did you first start service?
It was, let's see now, does it say it on that sheet there someplace?
Is it like the very first sentence? My 18th birthday, March 2nd, 1946?
Well, when I was drafted was,
Okay.
look in here. It was September the 1st of 1950 when I received my greetings, and on October the 11th for induction. So I guess I was sworn in probably October the 12th of 1950.
Where was basic training at?
at Camp Polk, Louisiana. One thing about Camp Polk, there were not many rocks. It was easy to dig a foxhole. Sandy soil.
After basic, were you sent for advanced training?
No, I didn't. I only had basic training. And normally it took 12 weeks as a basic training tour, but we did some night training, so we got done in 10 weeks because they needed people overseas in a hurry. But I didn't get any advanced. I did get some advanced training in Korea for a couple of weeks prior to going up online.
What was happening in the world whenever you were in the military?
Well,
Besides the war.
the big thing, I guess, was the Korean War. That's about all I can remember. I think Harry Truman was president, and the biggest thing, I guess, was the Korean War. Those people were being drafted, and some of them were volunteering and so forth.
How long did you serve in the military?
Now, let's see, I got out. I think I got this all written down someplace, I thought. Let's look here. July the 11th, 1952, I got my separation papers. That I had to do, I think, several years of reserve before I actually got my discharge. But I was inactive rather than active. Active, I think you had to go to meetings and so forth, and I didn't want to do that. But I got out in July the 11th, 1952.
What was the reason for you to get out?
I just wanted to get home. Get back to what I wanted to do, get my life going.
Yeah.
If you served during the time of the war, what engagements can you remember?
What again?
What engagements can you remember?
Oh gosh, there's a number of them. It's all covered in this sheet right here. So what you ought to do is maybe just study this, or even study this. I've only got one book left, and I don't want to part with it, but you can sure use it if you wanted to.
Okay.
And then maybe for a couple of weeks or whatever. We're in the process of having some more printed. She's helping me with that. She has a journalism major, and she's interested in that sort of thing. So, but that's about it.
What do you remember most about your time in service?
Ooh, if you talk about combat, it's no fun. Yeah, it's not. It's an experience. I'm glad I went through it, I guess, but I sure wouldn't want to do it again. What you ought to do, if you would like to get some kind of a psychological. In the end of my book here, I wrote a little bit of I guess what you might call an epilogue. There was, at the time, if you remember, during World War II, the Japanese Americans in California and the western states, they were put in concentration camps, and that was, everybody said that was a black mark on the history of the United States. But I look at it a little different things. Their situation was, they were residents and they were members of our society. They were Japanese born, probably, and living there. And yet they were put away because they were afraid of espionage and so forth. But just look at it from my point of view. I was getting ready for my life, and I was drafted, and I'd a whole lot rather gone to that concentration camp that they were in. I don't guess you call it a concentration camp, really. It's just a plain camp. They had barracks and hot water and food, hot food all the time. And here I was in Korea, crawling in the mud, getting shot at, buddies getting killed right and left. I'd at any time taken their place and let them take my place.
Yeah.
So it was just something that they had to do as part of their contribution to the war effort during World War II. And this is my contribution to the war effort in Korea. It wasn't funny. If you want to take this book, read this one. This Norman Mineta was a congressman, and he passed a legislation after the war, sometime after World War II now, where each of the Japanese people that were, held prisoners were given something like $20,000 or $30,000, and that's fine. I guess maybe they deserved it. I don't know, but I didn't get to. I got $200 when I got out, and I was in a whole lot worse situation than they were in. They had a roof over their head all the time, never in the rain, never in the mud, nobody shooting at them. So, what I'm trying to say is, if you want to take this, read that where I talked to Norman Mineta. He was a congressman over in San Jose, California. He's talking about, what's his name's book? Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation. He's the one that said it was a terrible black mark on the U.S. government for doing that. But I think it was just their contribution. That's the way I look at it. Because it wasn't fun.
What qualities do you believe you carried from the military to where you are today?
Well, I guess discipline probably would be the biggest thing. Every minute of every day we were told what to do, and you better not do anything else. That's why I suppose being able to follow orders and discipline yourself, I think, was the biggest thing that I learned in the military. I learned how to clean my M1 rifle in the dark. that's not, I'm just joking now, but different things I did learn. Other than that, I didn't really learn any kind of a trade or anything in the Army.
What are your most enduring memories of your time in service?
Oh gosh, being homesick, being away from my family, dreading every day. You get up in the morning, you think, well, this might be my day to get killed, and that's the main thing that I remember. It was a terrible experience, just basically. Wasn't any, very little fun connected with it.
Do you ever get back together with the people you served?
Yes. I joined there's an organization called the 24th Infantry Association, and I was in the 24th Infantry. And we've had several, I guess you call them get-togethers or reunions. I've been to a number of those. And there's only one fellow that was in that association that I remember over there. His name was Williams. And I got to know him. He was in my company. And but otherwise, the others I didn't know, but they were in our company, and they knew a lot of people that I knew, and so forth. And it's always really a lot of fun to go to those reunions and tell war stories and stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories you'd like to just share?
I don't know of any really. I don't. Huh? Oh yeah, well, I got a pic. I've got a. And you folks can have this if you're at all interested in it. This is a replica of a helmet. I got shot in a helmet one
Oh,
time.
wow.
And this isn't the helmet because I got rid of it. I was afraid I'd get another bullet in the same place and go through the next time.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway, I've got it in my office over there at Primrose now. Got some other stuff in here that I don't know if you're interested in or not. But these are hand grenades that we use. Just one little thing about this. You notice this cap on this one and the cap on that one? One of them is a 3-second delay and the other is a 5-second delay. What happens when you pull the pin out of here, it won't go off until you turn that handle loose. There's a handle on the side here. When that flaps over, it'll go ping. It's kind of like a 22. And that sets it off. From that time, you've got either 3 seconds or 5 seconds to get rid of it, or it'll explode in your hand. But that's just a something. But here's the ammunition we use in the M1 rifle. This is a canteen with a cup. And we, out in combat, out on the line, that's something pretty important. Mess kit, we didn't use them very often because we ate sea rashes out of it, right out of the can. But then when we did get hot chow, they usually brought this along. We didn't have to carry it. This is a shovel that we used to dig our foxhole, which was a must. And this is a bayonet. As we would take a hill in steps, when you got to the last step where you're going to push over the top, you always put your bayonet on your M1, because M1 only had 8 shots, and if you used all 8, and the guy was coming at you, you needed something to protect yourself. So that would do it. We had training, quite a bit of training on how to use it and what to do and not to do and so forth. But that was important. This is just a picture of a typical hill. Got fingers going down. And what you would do, let me kind of explain this to you. Each of these fingers would have certain knobs on them. And they were just hilly and rocky and brush, not any really big timber, but small trees and stuff. And not many people could assault at one time. So usually a platoon would be in charge of maybe like 2 or 3 of these fingers. And the first squad, for example, would fight their way up to the first knob, and usually there'd be a machine gun there. And you set up our own machine gun back here and shoot at that machine gun up there, keep their heads down, so the rest of us could crawl, sneak, run, walk, whatever, up around, till we got close enough to throw a grenade in their hole. And that would take care of it. Then we'd move the machine gun up to that first knob, and another platoon, another squad would come through and assault the second knob. And repeat the thing till you got to the top. But like I said, when you got to the very top, then you'd put your bayonet on in case the enemy came and you were out of shells. This is a typical bunker. We dug our own bunkers, naturally. And this is a Chinese bunker, but ours look just like it. And let's see, here's one with hot chow. They brought chow to us whenever they could. But usually it was an awful chore for them to do that. Those hills were terribly steep. We captured a mule one time. The Chinese used mules to move their equipment forward. And it's kind of interesting because they had shelters made out of brush. So if a plane came over, they'd get their mule and their pack under that brush, and the planes couldn't see them. That's how and then they brought their supplies. But then we captured one time. We thought, boy, we got it made. We'll put our water bag and our machine gun ammo, and we'll have him carry that machine. So we don't have to carry it. Well, he couldn't climb the hill. It was so steep and rugged. We finally just turned him loose and let him go. We had to do it on our own because that's how steep those hills were. And there's a pretty good picture of that, kind of, you can see here, like here, for example. It's just really rugged. Yeah. Most of the trees are gone because of being bombed and napalmed. They had things like barrels of gasoline and oil mixed into kind of a jelly-like. And when the airplanes would swoop down and drop that on a bunch of the enemy, it just about wiped out everything for about maybe a 200 diameter space. Just burned. If you got napalm on you, it burned right through your skin, you know. And that would result in all the vegetation being gone off those hills by the time we got there, because we always did a lot of artillery bombing and then the Air Force calling in airstrikes on these hills before we tried to take it. So it was really rough territory. Like I said, our mule couldn't even climb up it. Here's a typical shower out close to the front lines. Can I show you one here about I got another one. By the way, this is my squad. I'm not over here. There was 9 of us. We were in reserve at that time along the Pocahontas River. And here we went to Mass on Easter Sunday. I think that was April the 25th, 51. The priest set up his stuff on a Jeep hood, and the GIs all come. They'd been out in some kind of open field someplace where they could all get to it and so forth. And I went to every Mass I could. We didn't have it very often, but whenever we did, I would go. And I was there on that April 25th. I kind of halfway remember it. But that's the way the priest, we didn't see him very often, but and of course up on line we didn't see any. But when we got back in reserve, that's when they'd have Mass. So on.
All right, that's it.
All the questions we got?
Huh?
Tell them about when you pray the rosaries.
Well, I guess I'm gonna, here. Did you get one of these?
Yeah.
Okay. Look on the second page. Well, one night anyway, we were out and on the, what we call Barbara Hill. We were all afraid we'd get attacked any time. There was an outpost pretty close to us, out on a little saddle and a knob up here. And they put those outposts out so that the main force could see if they were going to attack or not, because they'd always hit the outpost first, and then they would do the main attack. Well, there's 3 guys on this outpost, and they got ran over. The 3 of them were killed. But anyway, then they artillery shells came in, and then the mortar shells came in. And they always do that before they attacked. I thought, boy, we were sure going to get hit tonight. And I prayed something like 20 rosaries that night. And the way they did this now, a foxhole was usually 2 people or a bunker. And you had on guard an hour and off guard an hour. So it's kind of hard if you sleep for an hour and the buddy wakes you, it's your turn. Of course, the thing of it too, you sure didn't want to go to sleep because they might sneak up on you, you know. And you didn't get much sleep that way, but that's a good time to pray a rosary when you're sitting there on guard, you know. But so I prayed about 20. It's in here someplace.
And tell them about typing, that you got a job.
Yeah, well, that's in here too. This was in September. Well, first of all, I was very, very lucky all the time. A lot of times people would get killed, and I should have been killed instead of them, but they didn't. So in September at one of the gatherings, I guess we were in reserve, this word came down that they needed a typist, a company clerk over at headquarters company. So man, hand went up, I can type. So I got the job. Well, I had a two-week trial period before the company commander over there would let me do it. And I always did it at night. It was due at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, and we had electricity in that headquarters company. We didn't have nothing like that any other place. I do it at night before I got to bed, even if it took 12, 1 o'clock. And the company clerk, company commander, would hold it up to the light to make sure there were no erasers. And those big old typewriters, you know, it's awful hard to make a mistake and then you got to do it all over again. Didn't have word processors at that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got the job, and that was probably saved my life because they had a big push later on when I was with headquarters company. An awful lot of people in our company got killed, and I missed it. And so often, things like that would happen to me. I was in NCO school at one time. NCO means the non-commissioned officers, like a sergeant and so forth. I was gone for 2 weeks to that school. And at another time, they got into a big assault, got an awful lot of the boys killed. Talking about that is, and it's in here someplace. After I got back from Korea, I went down to the record center in St. Louis and copied all the morning reports from G Company. Morning report is a kind of a personnel record of the boys coming into this company and those going out and so forth. And the company has about 200 men in it. And I made copies of all of it for G Company while I was in there. And then when I got back home, I did this after I was home. In fact, I did it in 2004 is when we wrote this book. And there was, in the 6 months that I was in combat with the company, they lost, what did I say, 235 men? And the company is only 200 men. And it's in a 6 month period. To figure that out, it's a 235% mortality rate that our company had. So it really was a serious situation. But it's in here if you want to. There's some other things that I don't have in here. Well, I don't have that one battle that we had on April 22nd when the Chinese made a big push. We lost an awful lot of men in that too, but we pushed us back about 65 miles. And we were completely isolated for quite a while. They couldn't even get food to us. But we had to survive on what we could find. But we made it back okay and set up on Barbara Hill at that time.
What did you do after you got home? Like, what job did you get?
Okay, I got home in like July, I think it was. I went back to work for my brothers and dad in the dealership. And then that fall, I married Jean, November the 27th. And then in the first of the year of '53, I bought my dad's part out. Then I was a 1/3 partner in the dealership at Meta. And then in '51, we were hard to get cars. For some reason, well, I know the reason. It was General Motors was being accused of having a monopoly on the car business. And the government was wanting to break them up, the antitrust situation. And to prove that they weren't, controlling the market, they'd issue only as many cars as your territory could use. In other words, we were at Meta, we had about 4 or 5 little towns, and their planning volume, they called it, wasn't very much. So that's all the cars they'd ship us. We could order all we wanted to, and they wouldn't ship any more than that. And here we were 3 young men trying to get things going. So we bought the other dealership in Owensville. They had a pretty high planning volume. But after the first year, the government, or the General Motors, reduced their planning volume again. The second year, they reduced it more. So we were working with a company that just wouldn't help us at all. So that's when the Ford dealership in Jeff City opened up. And then we could get all the Fords we wanted. And we did do real well from then on. We were one of the most successful leaderships in the nation. We were recognized as that.
That's cool.
I think we're done.
How do you do this now? Do you make up an essay on this?
I think they just send in the video.
Send the video?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't really have, I probably said about maybe I said more than I should have. But I get kind of upset sometimes when they talk about, like this Brokaw talking about how the Japanese Americans were treated. Well, we would have glad to have done that as compared to what we had to do.
Yeah.
And that, for what I'm concerned, that was just their contribution to the war effort by allowing to be locked up, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You got to come home on Christmas.
Oh yeah, I got on when we come home, I got on the Well, we left Korea, went to Incheon, it's a port on the northwestern part of Korea. And it took us on the boat down to Sasebo, which is a camp down there. I think it's Schanzmeyer, I'm not sure of that. But then from there we got on the ship to come over here. And it was a little victory ship, Private Munamori was the name of it, on Christmas Eve of '51. And I got to Seattle in about 3 weeks later. It took us about 3 weeks to come back. One engine quit on that ship, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
Otherwise we'd have been home about a week sooner. But anyway, that's one of the stories. Then when I got back, I asked for Fort Leonard Wood to finish out the rest of my 21 months, and I did get it. Fort Leonard Wood at the time was about 50 miles from Beta, so weekends I could come home, get a weekend pass. And I was a sergeant at that time. Sergeant is, the 3 stripes up above us, 1 below. That's E5, I think they called it. I was in charge of training recruits on their first 8 or 10 weeks of training, and I went through two groups of trainees at that time. And at their graduation ceremony, one time they gave me a gold watch. Now, generally, your platoon sergeant is hated by everybody. Everybody hates his guts because he's the one that makes you do all this stuff that you don't want to do. But actually, when the first group gave me a watch, it's a gold watch, I still got it. And then when they gave me a billfold with $100 in it, so I was kind of proud.
Yeah.
I think they all kind of liked me because I treated them well.
Yeah.
I told them, you better pay attention and learn what you can because you might need it one of these days,
It's pretty cool.
Well, I guess you know the rest of our story. After we were in the Ford business until 1974. My older brother Pat had a heart attack, and he was told by his doctor that you better do something else because it's pretty much strained in the car business. So we decided to sell the business, and we sold it to Pete Goldschmidt at the time. And then we bought our first group of apartments about that same time, right next to the Ford dealership. They called it Westwood Court at the time. I think it was 108 apartments. But long story short, since that time until now, we built and bought, so we now have 458 apartments in the DeVille complex. It's one of the largest in Jeff City, so it's going good. Her son runs it her husband ran it for, 39 years? Mm-hmm. And then his son, Brandon, he's a graduate of Elias, took over, he's running it now. He's an IT college graduate. He got everything digitized or computerized. And it's really amazing what you can do with a set of books like it. All different than the old typewriter and the old adding machine that you had like this. When I was keeping books.
Yeah. All right.
That concludes the.
Would you like to have this? You can have that.
All right. That's cool.
And would you like to read this?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to have it back.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We'll tell our
Mr.
teacher.
Emmer.
Yeah, our teacher to give it back.
But just give me a call, I'll come get it or
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Because I've only got 2, and one we sent to the printers to see about having it printed. We can't find the digitized disc or whatever we had. The printer must have thrown it away, so we have to make a new one.
All right.
But we might happen to need another book, is why I say that.
We'll definitely get back to you.
Okay.
All right.
You might want to wait a few minutes because the bells just rang and the
Yeah.
hallways are going to be filled with kids.
Yeah,
It's
so.
okay.
Can I get a picture of you all together?
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
want to tell one more little story. When we
Okay.
were, on April 22nd, the Chinese had a big push. We were up online in a small valley, probably 500 yards wide. And along in this valley was 2 tanks and 2 half tracks. A half track is like a truck with tracks on the back. You've probably seen pictures of
Yeah.
those. And on the back of that, it had 4 50 caliber machine guns. You want to talk about firepower? They had a lot of firepower. But then we would, anytime a big machine like that is up lined with you, they always had the infantry to dig in between the tanks and stuff, because otherwise one of the Chinese could crawl up there and throw a bomb in one of them or something. So they had to have infantry dug in between them. Well, our company, G Company, was dug in for 2 days, and nothing happened. Everything was fine. So they moved us up on side the hill, and they moved K Company down in our place. Well, that night the Chinese hit, and I'm telling you, they hit with thousands and thousands of them. I don't think the first group of enemy soldiers even had guns. They were just to trip the what you call it, so we had set out in front. Can't think of the word for it now. But and also to mash down the barbed wire. We also had a concertina wire out in front of us, so it would make it hard for them to get through. But anyway, they blow their whistles and their horns, and man, it scared. It make your hair stand up. And we had our artillery now had in fact I might cover it in there somehow. They'd shoot up flares that had parachutes on them. They shoot up maybe like 1,000 feet or 500 feet, I don't know, and then they slowly drift down to light up the area. Did a pretty good job. You could see pretty good at night with that. They also had some big electric generators with lights sometimes. I think at this time it was just all the flares. But anyway, we were up on side the hill and saw the real. Luckily, if it had happened the day before, I'd have been caught in this. I think out of the 200 men of K Company, there's only about 15 or 20 that didn't get killed that night. But anyway, they finally broke through about midnight, and then we marched up the hill, caught a ridge line, and walked on back. And that's when they pushed us back about 60 miles at that time. And I think a plane flew over the next day, took pictures of the area, and they counted 700 dead Chinese.
Wow.
That's how many they killed. But then it killed quite a few of our people too. But I was lucky. See, I wasn't there. I just missed it.
Yeah.
That happened to me a lot of times. I did get some shrapnel in my hip one time. That's another little story. It was a mortar round. The Chinese were really good at mortars. They'd zero in an area. For example, if you were moving from one area to another, you went across a little creek or a spring where you could fill your canteen. Don't stay there long, because they have it zeroed in, and the mortar rounds would come in. But anyway, I forgot what I was going to say now.
About the scrapnel? I mean,
Yeah, I got hit with some mortars one time and got some in my hip and one in my right knee. And the medic patched me up and dug out as much of the shrapnel he could, and we finished off the day. Spent the night on the hill. The next morning it was bothering me real bad, so I went back asked permission to go back to the aid station to get patched up better. And they did find some more shrapnel there, and they patched me up better, and it never did bother me anymore. But at the time we were there, here come the awards and decorations guys from headquarters, a couple of young whippersnappers, really sarcastic, and said, "Soldier, do you think you deserve a Purple Heart?" And I said, "Look, I only came over here to do my job, and I hope I go home in one piece. Now, you can take that, you can take that Purple Heart and stick it up your back. Well, they stormed out of there, and I never did get my Purple Heart. I've been trying, and I have to prove it, and I can't prove it, so anyway. And also on that, one of those pictures there shows Purple Heart on my ribbons.
Yeah.
That's not official, so you can't, you get in
Okay,
trouble
so-
for claiming that you've got one and when you
Yeah.
don't.
Do you want this book back? Or
Not
can't-
this one, no.
Not this one? Okay, just this
That
one.
one, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Mhm.
Cause I think we have to turn those into like
Yeah.
library copies.
Yeah. So you wouldn't get it back if you wanted it, so.
Alright,
Thank you, ladies.
you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Let me shoot off some steam.
Totally fine.
I hope somebody knows how to get out of here now.
We can, yeah, we can take you.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna send the camera up with you.